You're listening to Retro Reels, a show that looks back on films from time gone by and recalls the various events, trends, and perspectives that informed their creation. I'm your host, Hannah Walensky, here to guide you through a trip to the past via the silver screen. I've got something slightly different prepared for today's episode, for which I have watched the 2001 anime film Metropolis. This is one of many cyberpunk movies to come out of a trend that was first started by Katsuhiro Otomo's 1988 classic Akira, which I watched for the program back in May. Otomo actually had a hand in the making of Metropolis. He wrote the screenplay. It was Rintaro, however, who took over direction. Rintaro is the pseudonym of Shigeyuki Hayashi, a freelance director of anime films who most often works with an animation studio he co-founded called Madhouse, which produced Metropolis. He's been part of the animation industry since he was 17, and in his more than 50 years of experience has collected quite the list of credits, among them the television series for the very old-school, very classic manga series Astro Boy and Kimba the White Lion. These IPs, in addition to Metropolis, were all created by Osamu Tezuka. I didn't get a chance to talk about Tezuka in my series on anime movies, since I focused mainly on movies from the late 80s through to the early aughts. Tezuka goes way back to just about the beginning of Japanese manga and animation as we know it today. He is often referred to as the godfather of manga, with some describing him as Japan's equivalent to Walt Disney. And the influence of Disney in his work is, I think, very evident from his drawing style, which is distinctly Mickey Mouse-ish at times, particularly in his rendering of characters' eyes and feet. The Metropolis manga series, upon which this movie is based, goes back even further than Astro Boy or Kimba the White Lion. It was part of his early science fiction trilogy, sandwiched between Lost World and Next World, and tells the story of an artificial humanoid named Michi, who can fly and change sex at will, and who is wanted by Metropolis' wealthiest citizen and most powerful politician, Duke Red, for destructive purposes. The anime film diverges fairly significantly from this, focusing instead on the class struggle in the plutocratic Metropolis, but director Rintaro's aim was always to infuse the movie with the spirit of Tezuka's greater body of work, namely Astro Boy, which explores in great detail the relationship between robots and their human masters. The anime film mainly differs from its source material by including more references to and borrowing certain plot elements directly from the Fritz Lang 1927 film by the same name. Tezuka had derived his initial inspiration for the story from this movie, but only from publicity stills, not from having actually watched it before. With Rintaro at the wheel, what results is a kind of steampunk, Great Gatsby-styled aesthetic, complete with a swinging jazz soundtrack and a stark divide between the haves and have-nots that harkens back to the Great Depression era.
I can't stop loving you. I've made up my mind to live in memories of the lonesome time. I can't stop wanting you. It's useless to say, so I'll just live my life in dreams of yesterdays. Those happy hours that we once knew, though long ago, they still make me blue. They say that time heals a broken heart, but time has stood still since we've been apart. time. I can't stop wanting you. It's useless to say.
So I'm straying a bit from my usual format, and I've brought my colleague, Amanda Stevens, on today to talk about Metropolis, which she brought to my attention while I was creating my anime series earlier this summer. I had never heard of this one before, despite knowing how important Osamu Tezuka is to manga and anime, because it's such a throwback. Can I ask how you discovered this movie in the first place and why it stuck with you?
I actually found this movie because I was in college doing an anime movies class where we were dissecting a lot of movies from East Asia. And so this one came up as one of the movies we talked about. And I actually did a deep dive into this movie because we eventually had to pick one of the movies we saw, do a presentation and write an essay and kind of give it a literary critique.
No wonder you knew about all the movies I was covering.
Yeah. So a lot of the movies you covered are movies. But again, I think that's because one of the points was to kind of cover the big benchmark movies that really contributed a lot or that really were well known for either their production value or what they gave to the genre as a whole, whether that be authenticity or sort of a sense of being a real film medium. Because I think at the time, especially Akira, animated films weren't really considered for adults and they weren't really considered to be a medium which could convey a serious message.
Right.
At least in the
Culturally
West.
and aesthetically significant.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is one of the later ones that we covered. And one reason it stuck with me at the time was it felt really relevant at this point. That was 10 years ago. And bearing in mind that this is a movie from, at that point, 10 years ago, now it's over 20 years old, I think one reason it sticks with me is it's a consistent relevance because it comments on themes that we haven't solved yet. And I think that basically the film itself, one, it's an interesting film, it's visually stunning, but two, it's so layered in symbolism that you could probably find a meaning in it at any point in time, which I think is the Impressionist influence in it.
Yeah, I find it pretty crazy that despite being such an expensive production, 1.5 billion yen over 5 years, surpassing Katsuhiro Otomo's Akira and making it the most expensive anime film to date in 2001, it seems to have been kind of left by the wayside when it comes to the ones that everyone knows and loves. And this is even more surprising considering, like you said, the art is really intricate and the world of Metropolis is really alive. Do you have any thoughts on why this one isn't as prominent despite its budget and the fact that so many hotshots of the anime industry were working on it?
It always shocks me that not enough people know about it because I agree with you, but I wouldn't have known about it myself if I hadn't been in this class.
Yeah.
Actually, Tezuka was one of my really big influences because I used to work in comics.
Oh.
And so even having looked into his stuff, I had never come across this until that time. One thing that I admire, but might have been to the film's detriment, which is, in fact, Tezuka's style, in that it looks very cartoonish.
Yeah.
Like Astro Boy. It looks like a child's cartoon. I think that sort of plays, if you watch the movie, sort of plays to the strength of it in terms of it really contrasts against that early 2000s CGI, which also I feel has aged really well.
Very badly.
I feel the opposite. I feel in this movie it's aged well because it makes all of those CGI things feel more of a set piece.
Well, some of it looked really good and really seamless, and then some of it stuck out like a sore thumb to me, and I was
fish,
"What?"
The scene with the big metallic
exactly.
fish.
I was like, "What in the world's going on here?"
But I feel it's crazy. That is true. But I feel relative to other movies that came out at the time, I feel the CGI has aged surprisingly well.
Oh no,
which I also
the other
feel
parts looked really nice.
Yeah. But I think that's a lot of what contributed to the budget. And then I guess getting way back, I feel it's a good case study that your art style doesn't have to dictate the story that you tell.
Yeah.
Because it's a really heavy, really nuanced story that involves things like a presidential assassination, a coup, multiple coups, failed coups, family violence, a lot of this stuff in this art style. And it never feels, to me at least when you're watching it, it doesn't feel antithetical. But I do feel it might have held people back from wanting to see it or taking it seriously, especially at that time. Anime was still, I think, niche enough.
Yeah,
and
I would agree.
It didn't look as serious as precursors like Akira or Paprika or those other movies that people chose to take seriously. It looks like a children's cartoon.
It's true. It's more cutesy looking,
So
despite dealing with hard stuff.
I think that's something that held it back. And I also don't think there was that much word of mouth to talk about it. I don't think Tezuka had really had such an imprint on at least the Western world as he had in Japan.
Right.
So all of these my tin hat theories, I don't know.
Okay,
That's what
yeah.
I think.
No, it makes sense to me. And you mentioned the political aspect of it and AI, robots, all of this stuff.
Yeah.
The film's premise, it feels more relevant than ever now,
Yeah.
given our current state of affairs. The ever looming threat of AI replacing our jobs.
So shocked.
Yes.
It's like directly commented on in the movie as well.
Yes.
Not AI, robots.
Yeah, and the story is
Robots.
a blatant critique of the way capitalism gives way to fascism. How the ruling
Yes.
class will use any tool at their disposal to keep and grow their power. Duke Red, the villain, is eminently hateable. I love it when they're so evil that they blot out the sun.
Literally multiple times. Like I said, there's so much like imagery that you can read into this. I feel like if you can't catch any of the subtext, you're kind of blind to it. Like
So true.
You're being purposefully ignorant. There's just so much symbolism in it.
But what do you make of Rock? That's the one character that was kind of a wild card to me because
God, I hate that kid.
he's not exactly a good guy, but he's also Duke Red's undoing. Can you speak to that?
So in the movie, the main villain is Duke Red, and two of the most driving characters in the film. Duke Red is actually not a really prominent character.
Not really,
but his
yeah.
children are. And
Yes.
one of them is Tima, who is a robot, question mark. Definitely a robot, but sort of like falls into the automaton variety of like, maybe I'm human, maybe I'm a mix. And then there's his very human adopted son, Rock, whom Duke Red made, like in the first 5 minutes of the movie, it's made very obvious that Rock is a true believer in the anti-robot cause,
Yeah.
a true believer in his father,
Yep.
and wants approval from his father, and that his father really does not care less about him
Yeah.
for anything other than a pawn. Frankly, I forgot the large part that Rock played
Yeah.
in the movie.
Yeah. He's instrumental, really.
Because the first time that I watched this, I actually ended up watching it twice and writing about it twice. Once for a biblical literature class. Because of all there's just so much in this, but that's another study. Like there's so much because it's a German impressionist film that it's based off of.
I can see where
There
that
is
would go.
so much biblical imagery in it, which was interesting to pick apart as again, I think a very effective anti-fascist
Yes.
and capitalist critique, also embracing these images of like religious ideology. But having forgotten how much a part Rock played in it, I rewatched it again with my boyfriend and we were talking about it. This was his first time seeing it. And something that we kind of came to is like, especially in today's climate, the way that I read it this time is the anti-fascist sentiments came out a lot clearer. And in that way, Rock felt like the true believer who slowly became disenchanted with his father. And he was a true believer in a cause that the person who got him on board was not.
Yeah.
Right. And in that way, like my boyfriend literally compared him to he's a young Nazi.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
he represents like those groups that
Aryan youth.
exactly that one, the AR Corps or whatever it was called. But
Right.
you could read it in another way, but I feel like this time that is how it really felt because the whole way through the movie, while you can see, I think, Rock as the foil to Tima, he has a really strong idea of his identity
Yeah.
and the identity he wants to place on the world.
Yeah.
While Tima, his questionably sibling,
Right.
robotic sister, is always asking and trying to find out who she is. She never really
Yeah.
gets a clear answer, despite everybody kind of telling her, while
Yeah.
he's always trying to tell everybody else.
He's
And
he's
so-
very strongly indoctrinated by his father, and then
Yeah, I think really defined by that as
yes,
well.
when Duke Red took that away from Rock, like there was that moment he ripped off his armband.
Yeah.
I think it kind of depersonalized him, kind of snapped his mind in the same way that Tima's mind broke when she realized she was a robot.
I think it also kind of displayed the way in which a message can really get away from even a charismatic leader. Because as you said, at the end, Rock, ironically, is Duke Red's downfall while trying to save him.
Right.
But it's because all of his actions are driven, even when somebody tries to rip away his identity, it's too late. You can't change this kid because he is so far into the soup. You can't change him.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
he is a true believer.
brainwashed,
He'll live
yeah.
and die a true believer. So even when Duke Red is literally saying the exact opposite, Rock can't hear him. And all he can do is continue to follow what he's always known. I don't think the consequences are necessarily what he intended, but I think that's part of it as well.
Well, before we wrap up, what would you say to someone to convince them to watch this now 24-year-old movie?
I would say that I think this movie is a really interesting mix of a lot of different things. And so, one, the 2D animation is incredible and it is a really outstanding example of one reason I like these films. It's very dynamic. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a really good demonstration of a simplistic art style does not necessarily dictate a simplistic story.
Yeah.
Two, I think that the storyline is like eminently relevant because it's applying themes and ideas from an industrial revolution in the 1920s, 1930s that were then reappropriated when Tezuka wrote his sci-fi manga, which didn't use too much of the plot, but did like use that imagery. And that was in like the 70s, I believe. And then once again reused in the 2000s, and now viewing them in the later 2000s, I think that there is always something you can find that is relevant. And I think that it is a scathing critique that will give you a lot to think about.
Oh, yeah.
Wrapped in like this beautiful, colorful, musical like think piece. It's definitely like a thicker movie than it seems. I think it's an amazing movie to watch with somebody and talk about it afterwards. And I guess the last thing I would say is it will give you a lot to think about. Like if you're having kind of trouble with thinking about how I want to view things in the world, it won't give you answers, but it will give you very good questions.
Oh, we love questions.
Well, we love questions. This is what we're always doing. You and I are always doing this.
Well, thank you, Amanda, for sharing your thoughts. I hope that was fun for you.
It was.
I hope that was as fun for you as it was for me.
You must remember this, a kiss is still a kiss. A sigh is just a sigh. The fundamental things apply as time goes by. And when two lovers woo, they still say I love you. On that you can rely. No matter what the future brings as time goes by.
Shameless plug time. If you guys enjoy our rapport and you want to hear more, Amanda and I work together to produce the Doomscroll News Report, which comes on every Monday after the Daily News Block and Joey Cho's Beyond the Reefs. You can also find our previous episodes in the Current Affairs category on the RTI website, or in podcast form on Apple or Spotify. With the exception of my postpartum convalescent period, which occurred 3 weeks sooner than I was able to prepare for, it's been a whole year now of Retro Reels. I'm considering experimenting with the format a bit if this episode wasn't an indication. The basic premise won't be changing, but a bit of an evolution isn't out of the question, especially since this whole business of child rearing is supposed to gradually get easier, and theoretically, I should have more time to devote to getting better at this. Thanks for bearing with me during a particularly eventful and, being perfectly honest, quite a difficult year of my life, from pregnancy to postpartum and beyond. That's all I have for you guys today. I'm Hannah Belinsky. Thank you for tuning in to Retro Reels, and I hope you'll join me again next time on another look back on the way things were.